Here is a question that sounds simple but is not. Who is the most powerful person in Westeros right now? Is it Rhaenyra Targaryen, who sits on the Iron Throne with more dragons than any ruler in history? Is it Ormond Hightower with his 15,000 soldiers? Is it Daemon or Aemond or whoever ends up holding the biggest sword? Or is it an old man in plain robes with no army, no castle, no dragon, and no gold, who looked the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms in the eye and told her no? In this video, we are talking about the High Septon, the Faith of the Seven, and the one form of power in this world that Dragonfire cannot touch. We are going to break down what power actually is, the delusion that every ruler in this story shares, why the High Septon might quietly be the strongest player on the board, and how a queen named Cersei Lannister learned this exact lesson 170 years later, in the most humiliating way imaginable. If you like deep, analytical videos about House of the Dragon, hit subscribe, because this channel breaks down every episode and every big theory. Now, let's get into it. Let's start with the question underneath everything: what is power? Game of Thrones already gave us the definitive answer in a famous riddle told by Varys. Three great men sit in a room, a king, a priest, and a rich man. Between them stands a common sellsword with a blade. Each great man orders the sellsword to kill the other two. The king invokes his crown, the priest invokes the gods, the rich man offers gold. So who lives and who dies? The point of the riddle is that the answer depends entirely on what the sellsword believes. The crown is just metal. The gold is just metal. The gods are invisible. None of them can physically force his hand. As Varys puts it, power resides where men believe it resides. Power is not a sword or a throne or even a dragon. Power is a story people agree to believe. And the moment you understand that, the entire war for the Iron Throne looks completely different, because it means the most powerful person in the realm is not whoever holds the sharpest weapon. It is whoever controls what the sellsword believes. And in Westeros, no one, not the crown, not the banks, not the great houses, controls belief like the Faith of the Seven. Now let's look at the scene that started this whole conversation. After taking King's Landing, Rhaenyra Targaryen wants what every ruler before her wanted: a formal anointment, the sacred ceremony where the High Septon blesses the monarch with holy oils in front of the gods and the realm. It is the moment that transforms a conqueror into a queen, so the High Septon is brought before her, and he refuses. His reasoning is calm, precise, and completely unshakable. He already anointed a king, Aegon, just months ago. The realm says Aegon is dead, but where's the body? The Silent Sisters, the religious order that tends to the dead, have not confirmed it. Until they do, in the eyes of the gods, Westeros already has an anointed king, and the High Septon will not simply pretend otherwise because the person asking has dragons. And then he goes further, and this is the part that cuts deepest. He tells Rhaenyra that his gods do not deal in dragons. He calls dragons profane things, creatures that destroy but do not create. Think about what he is really saying there. He is attacking the entire foundation of Targaryen rule to the queen's face. The Targaryens built their dynasty on the idea that dragons make them closer to gods than men. The High Septon just told her that in the eyes of the actual gods, her dragons make her closer to something unholy, and he ends with two warnings that might be the most important lines of the season. Do not make an enemy of the faith, and underestimate it at your peril. Rhaenyra's response? Later, she quietly asks about getting rid of him, and she is warned, in no uncertain terms, not to interfere with the people's faith. And when the High Septon delivers his warning to her face, Rhaenyra just smiles, the polite, dismissive smile of a woman who thinks she is listening to a harmless old man. Remember that smile. It might be the most expensive smile in the entire series. So why is that smile such a mistake? Because it reveals the delusion, and the delusion is this: rulers in this story believe that power is a thing you can hold. A sword, an army, a treasury, a dragon, hard power. Power that takes up space, that you can count, that you can point at a map. And by that measure, the High Septon has nothing. No soldiers, no fleet, no fortress. If power is what you can hold, he is the weakest man in King's Landing. But walk through what he actually commands. The Faith of the Seven is the dominant religion of the entire continent. There is a sept in every village, every town, every city, from Dorne to the Neck. Every wedding is performed by the Faith. Every funeral, every naming of a child, every oath that matters is sworn before the Seven. The Faith is woven into every single meaningful moment of every single life in Westeros, from birth to death. Now compare the two kinds of power honestly. A dragon can be in exactly one place at a time. The Faith is everywhere, all the time, forever. A dragon produces fear, and fear only works while the dragon is overhead. The moment it flies away, the fear starts to fade, and fear must be constantly, expensively renewed with fresh demonstrations of violence. Faith produces belief, and belief is voluntary, self-renewing, and free. Nobody has to threaten a farmer into believing in the Seven. He believes on his own, he teaches it to his children, and his children teach it to theirs. Fear is a tax you must collect at sword point every single day. Belief collects itself. That is why the High Septon might genuinely be the strongest man in Westeros. Rhaenyra commands the largest concentration of hard power the world has ever seen. The High Septon commands the operating system running quietly inside millions of minds. She controls what people must do while she is watching. He shapes what people think is true when no one is watching at all. And a throne, in the end, rests entirely on what people think is true. And here is the twist that makes the High Septon not just powerful, but practically untouchable. Every way Rhaenyra could use her power against him destroys her. Play it out. Option 1, she kills him. Congratulations, she has just created a martyr, confirmed every whispered rumor that she is a godless tyrant, and handed the Faith the most powerful recruiting story imaginable. Kings have tangled with the Faith before, and the Faith has outlived every one of them. Option 2, she forces him, holds a blade to his throat until he performs the anointment. But a coerced blessing is worthless, and everyone would know it was coerced. The entire value of the ceremony comes from the belief that the gods freely chose her. You cannot counterfeit belief at sword point. The moment you try, what you get is not legitimacy, it is theater, and everyone can smell the difference. Option 3, she ignores him and rules without the anointment. Then every rival, every discontented lord, every hungry peasant has a permanent, gods-given justification to deny her, the queen the gods refused. There is no fourth option. That is what makes soft power so maddening to people who only understand hard power. You cannot burn it, because it has no address. You cannot besiege it, because it lives in mines, not castles. The High Septon walked into the throne room of the most heavily armed ruler in history, told her no, and walked out again completely safe, protected not by guards but by the simple fact that harming him costs more than tolerating him. Weigh that against Rhaenyra's position. She holds the throne, and she cannot even leave the Red Keep without wondering who in the crowd hates her. Which of them, honestly, is more secure? Now, the delusion of the dragon is not new, and this is where the history makes everything richer. The Targaryens have always half known the truth they keep forgetting. Go back to the beginning, to Aegon the Conqueror himself. Aegon conquered Westeros with 3 dragons, burned armies, melted castles. And then, at the moment of total victory, what did he do? He flew to Oldtown and he had the High Septon anoint him. The greatest conqueror in history, a man who answered to no one, knelt before a priest. Why? Because Aegon the Conqueror understood the difference between conquest and kingship. Dragons could make people submit. Only the Faith could make people accept. He needed the story of Westeros to say chosen by the gods, not merely strongest man alive, because the strongest man's story expires the moment someone stronger shows up. And notice the detail hiding inside that history, because it matters enormously right now. The historic seat of the Faith is Oldtown. And whose city is Oldtown? The Hightowers. The very family leading the green cause against Rhaenyra has spent generations side by side with the Faith's holiest institutions. Structurally, quietly, the Faith has always leaned toward the Hightowers. When the High Septon refuses Rhaenyra, he is not just being pious. He is, whether he admits it or not, aligned with her enemies by geography, by history, and by generations of relationships. Rhaenyra is not merely failing to win the Faith. She is leaving it parked in the Green's driveway. And if you think the Faith is all quiet influence and no teeth, history says otherwise. 2 generations before this story, under earlier Targaryen kings, the Faith raised its own armies, the Faith Militant, tens of thousands of armed believers who rose up against the Dragonlords themselves. Common men with stars carved into their flesh went to war against the most powerful family on earth, and it took years of blood and ultimately compromise, not conquest, to end it. Sit with that. Even dragons could not kill the Faith. The uprising ended when a Targaryen king negotiated, because there is no military solution to a movement that recruits from belief. Every believer you kill becomes proof of the persecution, and proof of the persecution creates more believers. Fear runs out. Faith compounds. The High Septon standing before Rhaenyra knows this entire history. His institution has already survived a war with dragons once. When he says underestimate it at your peril, that is not a threat. That is a citation. Which brings us to why Rhaenyra, specifically, cannot afford this enemy more than perhaps any monarch who ever lived. Her whole war is a war over belief. The lords rejected her claim not because of anything she did, but because of what people believe about women and power. Her entire legitimacy depends on changing minds, and she has walked into that battle with the worst reputation of any claimant in memory. The small folk call her Rhaenyra the Cruel for a child's murder she never ordered. The treasury is empty. Food is short. Someone is scrawling Queen of Bastards on the walls of her own capital. Her rule is a fire fueled entirely by public belief, and it is guttering. Now ask the critical question, who in this world has the machinery to turn scattered popular resentment into organized, righteous, unstoppable conviction? Not the lords, the small folk do not love them either. Not the merchants, the Faith. Only the Faith. Every sept in the realm is a broadcast tower, every septon a voice the common people trust more than any herald of the crown. If the Faith stays neutral, Rhaenyra's reputation problem stays a rumor problem. The moment the Faith turns against her, the rumor becomes doctrine. Rhaenyra the Cruel stops being gossip in a tavern and becomes truth spoken from every altar in Westeros. And no dragon can be dispatched against a sermon. Now for the ghost hanging over this entire storyline, because the franchise has already run this exact experiment, and we watched the results. 170 years after Rhaenyra, another queen sat in the Red Keep, brilliant at hard power and utterly blind to soft power, Cersei Lannister. And Cersei's arc with the Faith is the single most vivid lesson in the history of this world about the difference between the power you can see and the power you cannot. Cersei looked at the Faith and saw what Rhaenyra sees now, a nuisance, a collection of unwashed fanatics, a tool. So she armed it. She restored the Faith Militant, gave the Shadow a sword, thinking she was aiming a weapon at her enemies. She believed she controlled them, because in her model of power, she was a queen and they were beggars, so of course she was stronger. And the Faith took her measure, waited, and then arrested her. The Queen of the Seven Kingdoms in her own capital, taken by barefoot zealots. They imprisoned her, they shaved her head, and then they marched Cersei Lannister naked through the streets of King's Landing, through the same crowds that had bowed to her, while a septa rang a bell and cried shame. Here is the crucial thing to understand about that walk. It was not really punishment for her crimes. It was a demonstration. The Faith was showing the entire world in a single unforgettable image where power actually resides. All of Cersei's hard power, the guards, the gold, the name Lannister, evaporated the moment enough people believed she deserved to walk. The walk of shame was not the price of Cersei's sins. It was the price of her contempt. And now watch Rhaenyra in that throne room, smiling her polite little smile at an old man's warning, and tell me you do not hear a bell ringing somewhere in the distance. Now, an honest caveat, because this channel does not sell you false certainty. This is a thematic warning, not a prophecy. If you know the book Fire and Blood, you know Rhaenyra's downfall runs through different events, and I am not promising you a shot-for-shot walk of atonement in a future episode. The show is doing something subtler. The writers put the Cersei parallel in front of us deliberately, the dismissed warning, the contempt for belief, the queen who thinks the argument is beneath her, because they want us to recognize the shape of the mistake, not necessarily the shape of the consequence. The delusion is the point. What the Faith storyline reveals is not how Rhaenyra will fall. It reveals why she is falling. She has stopped being able to see any power she cannot count, and that is what makes this thread connect to everything else happening this season. Look at the pattern as a whole. Rhaenyra executed Otto Hightower and traded away the trust of Alicent, the ally who handed her the city. She lied to the realm about Aegon's death and traded away the truth. And now she smiles at the High Septon and trades away the gods. Allies, truth, faith, these are the three invisible pillars that hold up every throne, and she is selling them off one by one to buy short-term displays of control. We covered her psychological unraveling in our Mad Queen video, and this is the same story told from the outside. The tragedy of Rhaenyra Targaryen in Season 3 is that she is winning everything you can see on a map and losing everything you cannot. So let's end where we began. Who is the most powerful person in Westeros? It is not the queen with the dragons, because dragons only rule the ground they are currently burning. It might genuinely be the old man in robes, because he rules something Dragonfire has never once managed to touch, what the people believe is true. Dragons win wars. Faith decides what the war meant, who the villain was, and whose name the small folk curse for the next 100 years. Rhaenyra has conquered the throne. The High Septon still holds the story. And in this world, the story always wins in the end. So here is my question for you. Do you think the Faith will openly turn against Rhaenyra before this season ends? Or will it simply stand back and let her destroy herself? Tell me in the comments, because I read every single one. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like and subscribe for more deep House of the Dragon analysis. I will see you in the next one.